10:30 p.m. GMT in Accra, Ghana, the gateway to Africa. 5:30 p.m. CDT in Chicago, the Windy City. Hello and welcome to today's Masterclass. We're not only connecting time zones, like I said, by mentioning the time zones in which we are, but we are also connecting minds, we are connecting our hearts, we are connecting cultures, we are connecting self, and we are also connecting identity. Today's topic, we are talking about self-identity, and it's going to be 1 hour of thought-provoking conversation, and I hope you're really ready for it. Akwaba to you all connecting with us from wherever you are, whether you're in your home or you're in your office. Welcome to Ghana, if virtually. My name is Mariam Toure, and I'm going to be your bridge builder for today, and also the 2 other master classes that we'll be having next month, and also just before we end in the summer. Before I go further though, I'd like our virtual audience to know that this is a virtual safe space for all of you. We value your contribution, we value your thoughts, we value your ideas, and we respect everything that you say here, and it is protected. So you can actually share your thoughts and contributions with us freely. Simone, whom you all know, is actually on the call, and she would like to share something small with us before we continue. Hi, Simone.
How are you? So happy to have you, and so happy to be on this platform. Everyone who has met me in person or virtually, just to reintroduce myself, I'm Miss Simone Mosley, the Senior Program Director for After School Matters. And I really am excited to be a part of this collaboration today. I thank you all for being in this space with us. And I welcome you to join us in a really bold and brave conversation about African identity, our shared identity, and our individual and collective understanding of what African identity is. I also want to take a moment to acknowledge that this is a very brave conversation, which means while we're going to talk about some triumphs, we're going to talk about some tribulations as well. We're going to talk about whatever that authentically means to each of us. And so there will be times where it's going to be great, and there will be times where we're going to be touching on some subjects that might be sensitive. And so I do want you all to join me in a few attestations and affirmations for this space today to keep it safe. The first one being that we're going to assume the best intentions of everyone who is sharing in this space today. We are here to grow together and learn together and heal together. And so as we do that, we may make a few stumbles, but we're also going to move forward together. And so we're going to assume all of the best intentions always. And I also want you all to agree with me and to attest to collectively listen and share with an open mind and an open heart. Again, this is a safe space, and we really want to continue to create this space together. So if you can agree with me on that, can you type yes in the chat? You can punctuate it however you feel like. Give us some love, and let's get started with this amazing masterclass series. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you so much, Simone. And I can see a lot of yeses coming up on my screen already, some with a lot of exclamation marks, some are in caps, so they're screaming, yay, 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 yay. Well, I'm screaming with all of you. We're open for business, but before we start, I have an icebreaker, and I want to ask, I'll come back with the answers later, but I want to trick your mind a little bit to know whether you know what I think you know, or you don't know what I know you don't know. Did you see what I just did there? So welcome. My icebreaker, the first one is who is the richest person of all time? And I have 4 people. I have Bill Gates, Rockefeller, Mansa Musa the First, and Jeff Bezos. I wonder who thinks what. And the second one will be Africa is bigger than China, India, the contiguous USA, and most of Europe combined. Is that true or false? What do you think? So there'll be a poll, and hopefully I can take your responses after and also share the correct answers with you. But I'm hoping that you guys are geniuses and you're going to blow my mind like 100%. If I had a scale, it'll be off the chart. So why we're here today. The African identity over the course of time has been described as a triple heritage. One, indigenous tradition, infused with Western tradition and external religious beliefs, which is obviously Christianity and Islam, or perhaps if you're from Africa, then maybe traditional African beliefs. And these external forces are in constant interaction with the continent and producing a constant flux in which it means to be an African. This session will provide you with a lens through which to understand the African identity and the changing nature of what it means to be African. We will interrogate the extent to which one can describe themselves or others as African and seek to untangle the assertion of what it means to be an authentic African, and invariably provide us with an opportunity to discuss the varying forces that shape ours and what it means to be African in these contemporary times. The central theme for our master classes from now till summer is the African identity, with art as our primary medium. I'll give you a brief summary of the three that we're going to have. The major umbrella has three sub-umbrellas, and we have self-identity, which is today's class, and it actually explores re-emphasizing the African heritage, knowing your place in the world, recognition, and how the rest of the world actually view Africans and African Americans, and the role of the media. Abilities and capabilities will look at the history of Africans as inventors, creative artists, and very successful people. Our second masterclass would explore culture and music. I know you're going to love that. And then the final one would address socio-economical finance, literature, leadership, infused with politics, innovation, and technology. The key messages for these three masterclasses will be knowledge on self-identity as an African in the diaspora, providing a bridge from the diaspora back to the continent. What are expected outcomes? By the end of these three sessions, it is our expectation that you have gained at least 2 takeaway points from West African history. You would have been able to demonstrate an effective and effusive attitude on the topic enough to enhance continued masterclasses, and then have at least one engaging activity during this masterclass, and today there will be one. You would have been able to also ask questions surrounding your own personal identity, how you see yourself, how it affects your personality, and its impact within your community, whether nuclear or the broader community. So today's topic, like I said before, is on self-identity, know thyself. To help us do that is our guest, and his name is Ishiraba Yao Sumpa Ochri. Yao Sumpa for short. But before I go to him and then engage him, I think I should take the answers to the questions. Did you provide any? I hope you did, because I'm just about to show you what it was, at least so I don't keep you in suspense before we go. So the first one, did you guess right? Actually, ta-da, drum roll, Mansa Musa. So he is the richest of all time, at an estimated value of over 400 billion US dollars. Oh my God, I don't know what I'm going to do with that money. Mansa Musa of Mali, that's one. And then a final trivia. The response is, drum roll. Yay! So, Africa, can you imagine that? we're able to subsume China, India, the contiguous US, we have Portugal, we have Spain, Belgium, we have France, Ireland, Atlanta, Greece, even India with their billion population, right? Africa can subsume all of these. So you can understand that we are coming from a rich heritage, a land full of milk and honey, proverbially. But that is who we are. So I hope you guessed it right. We'll go to our guest. Before we do, though, a brief bio on who he is. He's an author who has spoken at conferences across many platforms and educational institutions, including Africa RICS Summit and Africa Cyberspace Conference. He's passionate about youth development, hence being here with us today. And he's written a few books. His second book especially tackles the bigger challenge of leadership and culture in Africa and how we can create an African Renaissance, which is very relevant to our topic today. Mr. Yao Sumpa is his name, and you can find more on him on www.africalearn.org. I'd like for all of us to note, though, that this masterclass is not about fixing anybody's identity per se. We all know who we are, and I am not here to fix you. I am not Agony Aunt, neither is any of us here, and Yao Sumpa is not Agony Uncle either. You know who you are. We're only interrogating the subject matter without calling anybody out. And so when it's time to share, please do share freely. Yao.
Hi.
Good evening.
Good evening. It's great to be here.
Welcome.
Thank you. You look amazing, actually.
Really?
Yeah, you
Very African. Do you see my identity?
Definitely.
Really?
It's good. It's good
I wear it
be
on
here.
my hat.
Well, it's actually visible
Thank
as well.
you. Thank you.
It's good
I came
to be
prepared.
here. So did I, actually.
So, would like for you to take us through your presentation on self-identity.
All right.
We're ready for you.
Okay, thank you. So I would like to start by saying thank you to all the parties who have made this possible. It's absolutely important that we agree that this couldn't have happened, but for the many people who's gone on great lengths to make this happen. And for you who is making time to spend the evening with us, we don't take your time for granted. And so I have a commitment in the next few minutes to make sure I give you the best possible within the time. And so, as Simone said, and as you did say, it's not as much as an intent to fix anything broken as to find inspiration and to find meaning in the mundane, as it says. And so, if we may go through the slides. So basically, we're trying to explore the concept of self, and in trying to do that, you did mention my name, but it's important I start from that place. My name basically, and for most of us, if we ask who we are, the most important thing we are likely to say is our names. And so Yao Sumpa, Inshraba Yao Sumpa Oche, basically, the Inshraba is a blessed son, a son who is blessed. And basically we say that, it's interesting this happens to be me though. I'm sure you were, when you were younger, you had bigger smiles. That this is the best smile I could find that day. And trust me, it's the best smile I could really gather. So Inshraba is basically blessed. And when we say Yao, Yao is a male born on a Thursday. And then Sumpa basically means the person who serves well. And Oche or Oche, basically the one who teaches or leads. Now I start from this place basically to say that if we ask all of us who we are, we're most likely to defer to our names. We're most likely to defer to how we're represented in the broader society. Having said that, I want you to begin to think of yourself beyond the name, but to the sense of what you respond to, right? And in to the purposes of what you respond to, going through the content, what we basically will be trying to do is try and understand the human pursuit, because I say that you must first be a human being before you are any other thing. To understand an identity as it is, whether you're African or whatever other identity you assume, you first must identify as a human being. And so what's the human pursuit? And then we'll establish some of the things that are known in life as a curve. And then we'll go back as far as we can to the Kemets, which is basically ancient Egypt, to find some nuggets of wisdom. And then we'll talk about the heart of the theme, which is know thyself, and then the African identity. And then I'll end with some personal stories. Now, having said that, I think it's almost universal, whether through our technical endeavors or biologically. Almost all the structures of the world tends to tell us a bit more about a sense of quest for meaning and relevance. And so I think that we all should understand that at the base of all humanity is a certain deep yearning for all of us, for relevance and meaning. And so once we start from there, and once our conversation becomes that it is of all human beings, we all identify as human beings because there is a deep-seated need for relevance and meaning, then we can approach everything else we do with a certain sense that whoever or whatever anybody seems to have gotten themselves into, or what they identify with in that moment, is perhaps as a means of journeying through a sense of finding meaning and relevance. Now, having said that, it's also important that we establish the fact that life is never a straight line, and this is extremely important to me. There are days we're very cruel to ourselves, and we forget that in the moments we're most cruel to ourselves are the moments we need ourselves the best, right? And so life could throw us into curves, and in those curves we're thrown out, we forget that we need to be kind to ourselves, especially when we start new journeys with so much excitement and motivation, and it quickly slumps into confusion and apathy and things like that, where we think that, okay, the end goal is dominance and relevance. How do we deal with the confusion? Because almost everybody goes through that cycle of confusion, apathy, and frustration. And so once we establish that it's also universal of all human beings that we need to be kind to each other in the moments we're likely to be most cruel to ourselves, we would have moved from the first point being that we all understand that we all are human beings, and at the core of all of us we seek meaning and relevance. But moving from there, we all don't have a straight line towards that journey. And so once we understand that the journey towards that end is not straight, we need to tender whatever perspective people have with kindness. Now, having said that, it's also important that we establish that the Kemets taught us a very important lesson, and that lesson I think is very relevant for us today. For the Kemets, which is ancient Egypt, the understanding of what meaning was is told in a very interesting story. And so for them, a life well lived is a life that passed what they call the feather of truth, or the ceremony of the weighing of heart. And so the story is told that when a person died, basically the heart of the person is plugged by the gods. And before your life is determined whether or not you lived a good life or not, your heart is put on a scale. And how light your heart is on that scale weighed against a feather. And that feather is called a feather of truth. And so the person who lived well is basically the one who lived with an empty heart. Right. The one who at the time of dying basically had an empty heart and no heaviness in the heart. I think that is relevant, and I'll come back to it, but I think that we all need to understand that irrespective of the fact that we want meaning and we want relevance and the journey is not straight, we should come to a point where we can look at ourselves and say that my heart is clean and my heart is empty because I've poured it all out, you know. And so once we understand that journey towards that place of relevance there is a place our heart plays. There's a place our passions play where we put it all on the table. The Greeks, who basically borrowed from the Kemites, tell us stories of people who are cursed, basically. And so they tell us the story of Oedipus and Sisyphus, which is basically people who the gods cursed, and in the afterlife had to push a boulder over a mountain, and the boulder falls all the way back. But Albert Camus, who is somebody who won a Nobel for his essays, does something very interesting with that essay or that story by the Greeks. And he tells us that meaning, even in the mundane, like the work of Sisyphus, can be useful if he comes to a place of contented acceptance. So if he can come to a place where he is content with the mundane, having known that he threw his heart into that, he would still be meaningful. And that is important, and that leads us to the heart of the conversation, which is know yourself. Because then the sequence of the conversation from we want meaning, but the journey is not straight, to the fact that even in ancient times, that place of meaning came from a heart that was well lived, needs to be buffeted with the fact that, okay, in that journey, how then do I reconcile, right? If my task is mundane and if my life seems to be like pushing a boulder up a mountain and it falling. COVID has taught us things very similar to that. But then what you realize is that, can I come to a place where I know myself in that task, and where in contemplation I can really know myself? And so the concept of self is important, and I think I'll take a few. Please feel free to give us some love in your chat box. If it were a live audience, I would always say that if somebody said something very profound, we would say "Mado," but this is not a live audience, so it would have been fun to hear people shout "Mado," But basically, the concept of self is really important. And for the Kemites, again, going back to the Kemites, what they taught us about self was actually 4 basic things. And in those 4 things, what we basically need to understand is that it's almost like a side of another coin. And so we're talking about the same thing, but of a different side. And so it's important that we understand what those 4 elements are as a lesson taught us by the Kemites. And the first thing, as I said, it's a side of the same coin. And so the first part of the coin is authenticity and truth. So it's like a head and tail of the same element. Right. In one part, the Kemites tell us to be authentic, right? But in authenticity, what they are basically saying is that, am I original to myself? Am I living to how my heart, am I pouring my heart? Am I original? But at the other side, they also say that to the extent that I'm original, I should still pursue truth. And in truth, they are basically saying, have I been true to learn the things that are not? And it's important how they define it, learning that which is not to be learned. And so truth for them was not as much of things that are as the things that are not, right? So for example, is darkness the absence of light, or what exactly is darkness? And so for them, exploring truth was, have I been true to learn the things that are not? So that if I understand the extremes, I can always find the sweet middle, right? And the other part of the coin, which is respect and humility. So one side gives us a sense to say that I need to respect everybody, but I need to be humble enough to understand that opinions may vary, and so I still would have to choose my authentic self in truth, yet humble and respectful of each other. And that 4 lesson is important. But just before I end, and then we go into discussion, it's important to say that some 5 things I have personally found is important. I think it's important that we understand ourselves, because I think all humans are like actors, and our interpretations of self is important to how we modify our understanding of the world and how we even act in terms of our agencies in dealings with other people and how we interact with other people. And so if I understood myself in this conversation as somebody who has knowledge enough to speak about this, I tended to have the confidence to speak about it. If I thought that, okay, I don't have the competence enough, I may naturally cower and not be able to have the conversation about it. Now, the 5 things, as I was saying, the basic thing, the first thing is character. And character is a very interesting word. The etymology basically dates back to labeling, and it's about branding. So putting something in fire, like slaves were tagged or animals were tagged. That's a character. So the character is basically that which is etched or into your body, that which is labeled. But we all understand that character is not static, it's fluid. And so the most important thing to say that identity is a core function of character, but that element of character is subject to growth. And that's how come I was careful to say that don't expect a linear trend. So whatever it is, understand that whatever the identity you aspire to, character is a great function of it, and character is a built ability. Now the second thing out of the elements is figures and models. Who do we look up to? Standards we defer to when it all becomes bleak. Those people, role models, are extremely important because they give us a sense of what is standard, and then we defer to them. Intentions and wills are basically the elements that if I have a desire as a human being, I can do it. And that will and zeal is extremely crucial to human beings. Once I have the will and the intent, I can basically do it. And the last 2, which is possessions and memory, possession is not as much as the things we possess as much as the things that possess us. Okay. So usually we say possession, he's possessed, or a demon he's possessed. Now we say possession because the things that really we possess become a function of identity, because then through it we see ourselves. And so we should be careful of the things that we claim to possess, because they have the power to possess us and then define us. And memory is a very powerful tool, which is how we construct the narratives from hindsight. So after it's all said, we sit and we reconstruct our life in hindsight to find that meaning and relevance, and we should be able to have the goodwill and intent to reconstruct life in the good. I can see a lot of Mado. I'm feeling that vibe. Okay, so now the next slide basically tells us, I think New York Times is doing a project which is called 1619 Project, which is basically highlighting African heritage. Now, the question of African identity is somewhat an interesting conversation. We're told, usually when I was going through school, we were taught our history as though our history only existed with the Portuguese coming here. So the 1400s, when the ships came, became the foundation of our history. But of course, we know that we were people who were organized and had states. Actually, some writers said that comparing the way of living and animal luxury, because horses wore golden colors. You know, we were about some of the richest people, and we saw that Mansa Musa in your trivial is about the richest person who ever lived. Now, the sequence of our history is important because I've had the opportunity of asking quite a number of youth if a ship docked on the shores of Jamestown, and the name of the ship was called St. Juan Batista, and it was taking people to the Caribbean to work How many people will be willing to leave the shores of Africa to go back somewhere they didn't know and work? And you're surprised how many African youth are willing to take that journey. But then I am quick to tell them that, that the name St. John Baptista happens to be that same ship that took the first slaves to the coast of the United States in 1619. And so if by telling them the mere reason, you tell them the same name of the same ship that took the same Africans back, and you still have a lot of youth who are prepared to take that same journey, some 400 years when we celebrated the year of return last year, right? The question is why? You know, from where I come from, we have a proverb that says that akwa, so odisha ankwa akwa jane, which is basically to say if the royalty does not fight, the slave runs. We tend to be seen as a people who don't have the courage to stay with our own, right? But I tend to think that our narrative is very different from how we've been told, right? Because now we see kings being carried and we think that's the end of it. But I think the African is really at the core somebody who understands that royalty fights. And I'll tell you a story just to end, which is the sacrifice of 3 chiefs. So in the 1625s, as with all other places, Ghana and most part of Africa were warring states. The Ashanti Kingdom, led by Nana Obiri Aboa, decided to do something interesting, which was to form a state, an Ashanti state. Now, to do that, there was a priest, or in other places we would say the Medis, or the chief oracle or something, said that 3 chiefs had to sacrifice their lives for the people in order to build a state. And 3 chiefs actually volunteered their lives, right? This is the narrative we're not told, but the Ashanti Kingdom was formed by the blood of people volunteering. One of the stories that really intrigues me is that Nana Kuenyehia Akodia, who basically led the warfare, did not fight, but led the warfare as somebody who raises the morale, right? And he's actually been known as the guardian of light, you know, by most of us. And so I would leave it and then tell just a personal story to end. But when we go into the questions and discussion, I'm sure most of the conversations will come up. Now, most of us listening to me will think that, okay, this is a guy who has it all figured out and probably is telling us about all these nice things. But I'm always careful to end everywhere I go with my personal story, because I think that it tells a story far better than any of the things I've said. Now, I come from a very poor background, and I mean poor in the very honest sense, right? Poor in the sense that my lunch literally, for most part growing up, was sugar in water and bread. So you just put glucose in water and bread and you dip it in. That was literally my lunch. Now, to tell you how low it went, even in university, when I was reading actuarial science and I was a president for Actuarial Science Society, my mother sold charcoal. And during vacations, I would travel like 3 hours to a village, go and carry charcoal and bring it back for sale, right? Now, the question is, how do you come from such a background in somewhere in the middle belt of Ghana and have the opportunity to have this great conversation with these amazing people, right? And that's important because having gone through this journey of life, you understand that whatever it is that the narrative is, you can turn it around. You know, whatever the narrative is, with will, with focus, you can turn it around. So let's just recall what we intended to do and then wrap it up. So basically, we set up to tell ourselves the stories of Africa. And okay, I've talked about sugar, but I guess we would leave it and just conclude with this. Basically, what we said is that human pursuit is universal. To be any other thing, you must be a human being, and all human beings seek relevance and meaning. But we've also said that be kind to yourself and to others, because the journey is not straight. And the moment you're tended to be cruel to others, at the moment you should tend up towards kindness. The chemists tell us that good life basically is a life lived from the heart. And knowing yourself basically is understanding authenticity, truth, as much as respect and humility, and understanding that there are functions of growth characters, attitudes, character, possession, memory. Those are things that grow. Finally, the Gans tell us about mean share. We're going to read a poem together, if we can, and then but the modern Gans tell us about mean share, which is basically a joyful life, a heart full of praise or emptied of grace, you know. And so the whole point is, whatever the context you find yourself, whether you're still part of the journey like me, still carrying charcoal, we say that the son of a charcoal woman shall wear white shirt one day, you know. That's a typical proverb from where I come from. And I'm here to share that story with you. And then just to end, we have a poem just to sum up the whole idea of. And so we'll just play that, and we'll all try to read it together.
I think first, though, that to bring everything back home, the self and the identity are multifaceted things that need to come together to create who you are.
Definitely.
So it is not just in the physical, it is in the innate feeling, the life lived, how you live it, and what you want ultimately the end to be.
Definitely.
That comes together to give you that self-identity.
Definitely. Definitely.
And so perhaps when all these tie together, that's where the worth of the self then imbibes.
Definitely.
And then you have self-worth.
Definitely. Definitely.
Woo, I'm a good summarizer.
You can say Mado for her. Just type in some Mado.
I want them all in capital letters. Please pray for me.
You know, so
before everybody takes it though, I thought Asia should do our first run.
Yes.
Asia Rogers, if you're there.
I must say that her interpretation of the poem was amazing.
Exactly.
Asia,
you're not wearing a hat.
I throw my hat to give you, you know. It was
I'm sorry, I was a little bit confused.
Can you hear us?
I can't hear my computer right now because my computer is a little bit wonky, but hi.
Hi, you did amazing with the poem. I loved your interpretation of the poem. Amazing. The cadence.
Thank you. The poem was really great. I loved it.
Thank you. The cadence was amazing. So we've done something very interesting with your recital of the poem, and we would like for you to just recite.
Do the rendition first.
Do your rendition first, and then we play something we've done with that.
I'm sorry, you'd like me to recite the poem?
We would love for you if you would do that, if you'd be kind enough to do that for us.
So just to be on standby, once Asia is through, I think the entire group can come together and then give us your rendition. I'm sure it's going to be like a chorus of the poem, but it will be nice to hear all of you give it a once-over before we continue with the rest of the program. So Asia, if you're ready, please take it away.
I grew up on whites. I was forced to believe that I was not bright, that my sight was dim, and had to fight for heights. I saw my light, but it appeared barely right for the night. Although I was excited when I made some strides, it was never like the white knight. At least that's what I was told. So I had to bite, spite, ditch polite, and even invited blights, all because of my plight of being invincible, lost in the twilight, forgotten, unrecognized, unloved. Talking about love, I was sugar. I was not the sugar. White, I was not refined. Collected, I was not the preference. Soothing, I did not fit into the box. Defined. I was slimy and made out of a sting. Little did I know that I was a king with wings to soar as high, to bring springtime by my thing. Little did I know that in my singing, writing, and even winking, I was more powerful with the bind, that I was honey. So I don't chase the gram for attention, honey. I don't quiver at their shallowness, honey. I don't apologize for my awesomeness, honey. I drip sweat and wet, honey, keeping it raw yet healthy, honey. When they call me brute, I shout wild, honey. So don't feel beaten by sugar, because you are honey. Build credibility, originality, and finesse, honey. Be African, be honey.
Mado.
God, you are honey, girlfriend.
Mado.
You should be here. I will be dripping honey all over you.
Mado.
This is fantastic. And I could see people, you know, in those little boxes smiling. Simone was all over. I'm sure she would have jumped off her seat if she could. She had all this grin, and so did I. Fantastic. I loved it. We all did. And right now, I think perhaps the whole group should try and do something. I mean, this should be very interactive, inclusive of everybody else. And so we would perhaps unmute the mics for a little bit for everybody to try and give it a go. So we'll project it on the screen again. If you don't have it, You can use the screen as your... Okay, 3, 2, 1.
I grew up on
Like I refused to believe that I was not bright, and my sight was dim and had to fight for height. I saw my light fade very bright into the night. Though I was excited when I made some strides, it was never like the white night. I believe that is what I was told. So I had to bite,
Fixed
This just what I was
even
told.
invited bright.
I have
All because I
invincible.
lost in twilight, forgotten, unrecognized, and unloved.
Talking about love.
Talking about love, not the sugar.
I was not
I was not refined, intellective. I was not perfect, soothing.
I
I
was
did not fit into
slimy and made out of
the
slime.
slimy
I
made of
knew
slime.
I was a
I
king.
was a king with wings to soar high to bring sometimes think little did I know that my singing, writing, and even
Fighting and
which
even
was more
winking
powerful and divine,
more powerful.
that I was honey. So I don't chase Instagram for
I don't chase
attention,
the ground
honey. I don't
honey.
quiver
Don't
just for
get
shallowness,
shallow.
honey. I don't apologize for the awesomeness, honey.
I
Wet and wet,
wet
honey.
and wet.
Keeping it raw yet
Keeping it raw
healthy,
yet
honey.
My
healthy.
internet
When they
is
call me
it's
Bruce, I
restarting. My
shout
internet
wow,
is
honey.
connected to my
So
Wi-Fi.
don't be sugar
Sugar.
originally honey, African, be honey.
wow, yeah.
I'm not sure. I think you guys are still talking about press.
Woohoo! You're all honey, dripping wet. What? Incredible? Incredible. Beautiful. Thank you all. And I am really excited about this because this is all about you and me and us. And it's very important that you all play a part in everything that is happening. So I'm really glad, even though the voices were all mixed up, it does show the variety of people that we have on this stream. I'm really, really excited. We are going to go into a Q&A session. You heard our guest speaker, Yao Sumpa, has delivered his masterclass to us on self-identity, know thyself. If you have any questions, you can actually raise your hand. We would open the mic for you, then you can ask. If you're shy, however, and you want to drop it into a Zoom box, we can take that one also. But it will be so great to hear your voice because voice is part of identity. It is who we are. And so I don't believe you should shy away from actually projecting your voice and then lending it to other people at this crucial moment. So please feel free. If your hand is up, just wave it. I'll call you out, and then you can ask your question to Yao Sumpa, whether it's about the poem we all heard, or it's about any part of the presentation that he did on self-identity, know thyself. Anybody with any question? If not, then I think there were some that came in earlier that I can start with whilst I wait for you to master courage and then get us what you wanted to ask. So Yao, one question, perhaps for me, will be, why is finding one's identity important to everyday life?
I think, as I said, as human beings, our interpretation of life as actors, I think we're all like actors, and we assume characters for each agency. And so the more I understand myself, the more I become relevant to society, because then I can assume those roles properly. And so I need an understanding of self to know that I'm a lawyer, having gone through the training in order to be able to go to court, right? I need to understand I'm a human being to be kind to others. Right. And so I think that understanding is core to defining how we interpret ourselves and our relevance to life and how we deal with other people. So I think it's at the base of all dealings with other people, how we understand ourselves.
Wow. Another question that came in is, what's the difference between true identity versus perceived identity? That is, if I'm made to believe to be something else rather than what I'm meant to be. That's so poetic,
That's a really important question, because if you remember the 5 things I said that are functions of defining character, which is basically memory. And so memory is how I perceive, or what I'm told, what I remember of the narratives I've been given. In as much as you could buy into what people say you are, a part of it that is also important, and that's how come this know yourself is important. Beyond what everybody says, who do you say you are, right? And so everybody says you're that, but who do you say you are? And in as much as you're listening to people, you need to listen to yourself. And so, yes, memory as a function of identity can make you take people's opinion as who you are, but you need to pay attention to yourself and listen to yourself. Perhaps you're the only person who can tell you who you are.
Okay. So I have a live question right now. Is it Jalil A or Jalila? I think that it came together, so I'm not...
Jalila, hi. I just want to start off that I really like this conversation, and I really like I connected with what you said about possession and how that can control your identity. I really like that. And I want to ask a question similar to the one that you just restated about perceived identity. So how could you eliminate perceived identities in society based on the traits that you just said that reflect around identity?
Oh, okay, so that's a really great question. Again, I was careful to say that the journey to identity is a pathway that is not linear. So it's possible that I see myself as something society still don't see it, because I'm still in the growth process, right? It's okay for somebody to define me by what they saw me do yesterday, but as I keep on telling people, if we judge everybody by their worst days, none of us will be good, right? And so we should all be careful to understand that, yes, people and the perceived identity may be very different, but focus on yourself, listen to yourself, grow the character, increase those functions of character, possessions, your memory, and the more you are authentic to self and have respect and humility, the more you understand that you grow, and eventually those societal perceptions will fall. At the time, what people thought of me is very different from what they think now. You know, I was a poor boy who was bullied all in school, you know, beaten literally, but I don't think the story is the same now. So just understand it's a journey and go through it.
Fantastic. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
But you're not going anywhere, actually. Okay, so I think to bring everything home to us and to contextualize this topic about self-identity, we have an original video, music, to go with what we have all read. And I wanted to put it out there. But whilst you're listening, watching, taking it in, I want you, when we are done, to share with me in just 2 words your feelings when you were watching it. So you don't know what is coming. If you knew, you'd be really seated. You even get a seat belt to fasten yourself in so you don't jump out of your seat. We'll take our video.
I grew up on whites. I was forced to believe that I was not bright, that my sight was dim and had to fight for heights. I saw my light, but it appeared barely right for the night. Although I was excited when I made some strides, it was never like the white knight. At least that's what I was told. So I had to bite, spite, ditched polite, and even invited blights, all because of my plight of being invincible, lost in the twilight, forgotten, unrecognized, and unloved. Talking about love, I was not the sugar white, I was not refined, collected, I was not the preference, soothing, I did not fit into the box, defined. I was slimy and made out of a sting. Little did I know I was a king with wings to soar as high to bring springtime by my thing. Little did I know that in my singing, writing, and even winking, I was more powerful with the bond that I was honey. so I don't chase the gram for attention. Honey, I don't quiver at their shallowness. Honey, I don't apologize for my awesomeness. Honey, I drip sweat and wet, honey, keeping it raw yet healthy. Honey, when they call me brute, I shout wild, honey. So don't feel beaten by sugar, cause you are honey. Build credibility, originality, and finesse, honey. Be African. Be honey, be honey, be honey.
Freedom. Can you wipe away your tears? Can you take away your fears? Can you take the pain and break the chains of freedom? We've been calling out to you. We don't know what we should do. Oh, can you hear me? Freedom. Can you wipe away your tears? Can you take away your fears? Can you take our pain, break our chains? Freedom. We've been calling out to you. We don't know what we should do. Hear me, hear me, hear me. Freedom.
Mado.
I told you. I really wanted to stomp out of the seat, right, and then break some chains, but unfortunately I wasn't shackled. But hey, this is a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful production, and it is original, by the way. It belongs to us right here, you and I. You won't find it anywhere else, and it was just created for this masterclass and for you. So I wonder what your thoughts are on that. Anyone wants to share something? I'll be glad to hear from you. What did you think about it? For me, it was powerful, it was emotional, it was energetic, and it screamed freedom. I don't know about you. Does anyone want to share? Anyone out there? If not now, I am sure that the conversation will go on. And I'd like to hear from you, or we would like to hear from you about what you thought, because the conversation doesn't end here. This 1 hour could end here, but the conversations that go on in our community, with our close circle, with our friends who are joining this, and all the ASM team, it's very, very important for us to do this. So, I've just been told there are two people who want to share.
I'm going to defer to our team first, and then I'll share.
Yeah, that's me. So for the video, it was really heart touching. Like when he screamed freedom, like it felt like so like heartwarming. It was amazing, the video.
Fantastic, thank you. Next person, please.
Yeah, I'm Vicki Casanova-Willis. I'm one of the instructors for our wonderful After School Matters teams. I want to thank you all for this opportunity so much, for Simone and also for you all. It was just so beautiful, and what I loved was both in hearing from y'all that, you know, here on this side of the Atlantic as well, we know that our history did not begin in slavery. We were not hatched there. But significantly today, my program learns a lot about international human rights and that we are in the International Decade for People of African Descent. And today actually is the International Day of Remembrance of the victims of slavery, all forms of slavery, and the transatlantic slave trade. So many of those images in that presentation just gave me goosebumps. It was such confirmation of what we have been learning together. So I just want to say thank you.
Thank you too.
Thank you.
Wow, that's a huge one. I'm getting emotional, but I have to zone in. Before we wrap up for today, there are a few things. Is there anything else? Someone else? There are two more people. Oh, fantastic. Please introduce yourself and go ahead.
I'm Jalila again. I talk a lot. I really liked the video. It was I like the colors. I don't know. I really am into like production and like the color schemes, and it was just very reflective and shiny, and it just like tied in with the poem saying that I'm bright and stuff like that, and not like dimming yourself. And it was really amazing. And I just also like, it was a powerful message, and it contradicted the single story like that was presented in the beginning of the video, like that everyone thinks about of Africa and African culture. And I really liked the video. It was really pretty.
Yeah. I am so amazed at this. This is what we work in our human rights project in our program. I'm one of the ASM instructors also. But I see there are a few of my students that are in here in this conference, and I'm sure that we're going to have a conversation. This is so amazing. Thank you so much for everything that you've talked about, because it's some of the same things that we talk about in class and in our other expressions and the videos that we produce. I am so excited. Thank you so much for your knowledge, your wisdom, and your own creativity. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The team appreciates all the compliments, and we're happy to serve. Before we go though, I'd like to bring it home. Our next session, which is built for next month, we'll be looking at culture and music. And we would have 3 dynamic young African artists joining us. One is a budding film director, the other is an actress, and the other is a well-known Ghanaian musician. I know you would know something about him when he shows up here. So we'll have 3 guests next time when we meet. And I know that if what we've seen today and heard today is anything to go by, you surely wouldn't want to miss the next one. I would make a date with you, and I would make a date if I were you. So please do not miss it. Before we go though, I know that you have enjoyed this from the comments that have come through both on our Zoom, and also your feedback. We want to thank you for giving us your 1 hour. You could have been anywhere else, but you chose to spend it with us, and we are truly grateful for that. For our teams in the US and also here in Ghana who have helped pull this production together, we say thank you. You did a yeoman's job, and we're hoping that we'll up it up the next time when we meet again. Please keep the conversation going, like I said, and it will be great to share whatever you're sharing in your own small circles with us, so that it informs whatever we do for you the next time when we meet. I think perhaps, Yao, you'd want to say your goodbyes before I sign off?
Just keep it mad, though.
So like I said, I look forward to lots of feedback from you, and all I can say is that you should remember to live out your truest, authentic self. After all, it is who you are. My name is Marian Toure. I am a media and communication specialist, and I'm also a gender activist. We'll catch you again, same time, next time when we meet. It's a date already, and I know you're not going to miss it. So thank you so much. God bless you all. Have a good evening. Over and out.
So don't feel greeted by sugar, cause you are honey. Build credibility, originality, and finesse. Honey, be African. Be honey, be honey, be honey.
Freedom. Can you wipe away your tears? Can you take away your fears? Can you take the pain and break the chains of freedom? We've been calling out to you. We don't know what we should do. Oh, can you hear me? Can you wipe away your tears? Can you take away your fears? Can you take our pain, break our chains, freedom?